You are listening to The Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative take about the world around me. So, I'm working this out to where I'm going to use Substack as more of a plausible social media for me. So I'm going to link that for you along with my email and other links that I have. And ratings are really important, and feedbacks, questions, comments, concerns is all important. So if you want to reach out to me, feel free to email or follow me on Substack and make comments. Be greatly appreciated. Also, I write on Substack, and if you want the writing content versus the podcast content, you want both, hey, feel free to go on over to Substack and read and follow, be a subscriber, and also give me a comment what you think about it. So, audio platforms, I'm going to list them briefly. I'm on Audible, Amazon Music, Spotify for podcasters, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Pandora, Google Podcasts, just to name a few. And I'm reaching out to where I'm on all of the podcast platforms. I'm developing, growing on, and working on that. So this episode is the last installment of talking about folklore. So I'm going to go into the categories, give more depth explanations, and so forth. Here we go. There are numerous different types of folklore, ranging from such diverse examples as jokes and riddles to animal tales and even some rites of passage. Many genres overlap, and sometimes they distinct between one type and another can be quite arbitrary. Nearly every culture that exists has its own set of lore, and one of the broadest categories of those of ethnic or national folklore. For example, the Arthurian legend can be viewed as both an example of English and Welsh ethnic folklore. Urban legends and tall tales are almost exclusively American. Fairy tales are the result of German ethnic tradition, while the Arabian Nights can be viewed as a regional Middle Eastern tale. Alright, so up next is the list of most common types of folklore. Okay, so these lists are more categorical in a sense. They're more than just lists. And so they range from general to those that are more specified. All right, so let's get into context of this. A legend is typically a romantic adventure story told in a historical context. Usually believed to be true, it is typically concerned with heroes and villains, epic battles, and great feats of courage. Usually the hero is an iconic symbol of a particular ethnicity or nationality. Legends are usually set in places and times long past, evolving as they are passed down from one generation to the next. Originally in form of oral tradition. However, when writing became an important archival and artistic method, legends were reproduced time and time again, changing with each author or writer's own background and perspective, surpassing cultural and national boundaries. More recently, through the media of film and television, legends have become perhaps the most long-lasting and popular of all types of folklore. The Arthurian tales of Great Britain are an example of cross-cultural nature of legends. King Arthur, the symbol of chivalry and the representation of the noble knight, began with the early British writers who believed Arthur to be a real historical figure. Although there is no historical context or account of King Arthur to verify such claims, that did not surpass or stop British writers throughout the ages from using him in various works, making his place among the most popular of British folklore. 20th century cinematic versions of Arthur, however, placed greater emphasis on Camelot, the Knights of the Round Table, Guinevere, Sir Lancelot, and the Excalibur sword, with little being said of Arthur's role in the equally popular Holy Grail legends. Not all legends, however, are culturally diffused on such a scale. The legends of the French warrior Roland, the Sumerian prince Gilgamesh, and the character Sinbad of the Arabian Night legends are all important literary figures that have not been adapted and circulated to the extent of King Arthur. These and others have remained within certain groups of people and have not been included in the broader literary or cinematic world. But to add on to this aspect of the Arabian Nights, so for the debate, I would say loosely the Aladdin is based upon the Arabian Nights, and that's something to look into. And that's a bit of a expression of retelling and doing a different interpretation about the Arabian Nights. And it's sad the way that Disney is, and the aspect of modern Disney, of how it's lost of values have leaked off and leaked away from the essential tradition and beyond conservatism, just moral compass of these stories. But it's something to say about the lineage of taking folklore and tales and retelling it for a general audience. Myths share many common characteristics with legends, in that they usually depict events of long ago and persons of epic proportion. However, myths have two distinct features. First, myths usually incorporate forces beyond the physical world, such as deities and supernatural powers. Secondhand, they can be ethological, explaining the origins such as things as world and humankind. Myths, more often than legends, involve archetype characters, as the literary scholar Joseph Campbell claimed. So basic is the idea of the journey of the hero to an underworld in an attempt to attain powers that he can bring back to save his world from an evil. That the paradigm has appeared again and again in all forms of literature for thousands of years. The structure and use of mythical usually overlaps with religion, as both attempts to detail the metaphysical and to explain how and why things are the way they are. So, for instance, every religion has its own mythological aspect. For For Christians, the New Testament represents the oral traditions of Jesus Christ and the missionary movement of his apostles after his crucifixion. While the stories of the Siddhartha's attainment of enlightenment is the central mythological aspect for Buddhists. And so let me delve into these aspects. So, Christianity. I find it quite interesting, the aspect of Jesus Christ and his teachings and his life and the legends and the myths behind Jesus Christ. It's one of those very interesting, as it explained, examples of myth becoming the essence of reality, because there are historical evidence of Jesus Christ actually being a person who did live on earth and who is accounts and testimonies about that, and historical accuracies of accounts of his existence. And then within this, you get the aspect of the underlying ideas of myth versus fact. For instance, the aspects of rulers among the specified rulers who were around during his time, and then also with the aspect of that going into the depths of explaining the different aspects of the reasons and the ideas and the patterns of the types of crucifixions of the Romans, and what they mean, and the caliber of the expression of meaning within the crucifixion of Christ. And then it's also quite interesting to go on to the aspect of religion as far as Buddhist, how with the Buddhist telling the Siddhartha, with the Siddhartha, how coming out of the aspect of being a person of not want, born into wealth, and realizing, from what I understand about the Buddhist faith, and particularly which I find, a great appreciation for, and have a great belief in, and also I have belief in great faith too in Christianity, but more so along the lines of my understanding of the Buddhist faith, of the lineage and the telling of it, of how breaking away from the aspect of going into the world and understanding the limitations of development through character, through adversity. And then it's also that aspect of the story of going back to his family and the abandonment, the real aspect of that, of the complexities of abandoning your family, and the nature of explaining the reasons that you've done this. And I find great turmoil in that too, personally, about that aspect of, leaving your family to go on this religious pillage, in order to find the enlightenment of yourself. And within all these things, it begs the great questions of the internal struggle of humanity, of what that is exactly, of what the plight is exactly of, and is it the aspect of, and there's enlightenment through struggle. I think that's just quite fascinating and quite interesting, that from the most part, from what I understand, that's the nucleus of understanding of the enlightenment and within that. And to go back to Christianity with the aspects of Jesus Christ and the legend and the myths within his miracles, and the real aspect of the reasons behind turning water into wine. And from my historical depiction, what my historical understanding, point of view, that's the more deemed correct term of my expression of what I'm about to say. So, in that time, the supply and the aspect of water in general, and the modern aspect of sanitizing water wasn't a thing. So you could get these deadly diseases from the simple aspect of using water and drinking water. And so wine and alcoholic beverages were sought after as a means of a more sanitized way of nourishment. All right, so here we go. The label of myth implies a fictitious story, but that is because historically myths have been used to describe any figurative story that does not pertain to the dominant beliefs of the time, and therefore does not carry the same status as those dominant beliefs. Thus, Roman religion is called myth by modern Christians. Some of the most famous myths in Western cultures come from ancient Greece and usually involves gods or demigods, and the origins such as the fire, the story of Prometheus, and the presence of evil in the world, as hence the story of Pandora's box. Another distincting feature of myths is the non-human creatures that are incorporated in the narratives. The dragon is perhaps the most popular, a large serpentine beast that has wings and breaths of fire. Others include the centaur, elf, fairy, the gnome, griffin, leprechaun, Pegasus, pixie, the sphinx, unicorn, and troll, just to name a few. Folk song. A folk song may be defined as a song belonging to the folk music of a people or era, often existing in several versions or with regional variations. Folk songs are perhaps the most cultural diffused of all types of folklore. Musical traditions and styles were culturally traded long before the rise of written works and the advent of recording technologies. As early as the 18th century, interest in regional ballads and music was on the rise in Europe. And this goes as the aspect to tap and on of more song along the lines of my reasons behind doing folk music as episodes in my podcast, to give the overbroad essence of how folk music taps into the aspects of what is important to a society and for its that goes in tradition. Festival. The earliest festivals revolved around harvest, honoring the dead, or celebration. The communal activity was often accompanied by music, dance, and storytelling, the most commonplace in time of folklore transmission. Often, the festival itself was based on a particular folklore, belief, or tradition, such as the Dionysus, festival of ancient Greece. One of the most famous and widely celebrated festival is that of Halloween. And to add on to this, the Day of the Dead on your All Saints Day as the really it is its own separate entity where it's its own celebration in the aspect of Mexican culture and folklore with honoring loved ones and their contributions and the living, and then the aspect of tying in the idea of mortality and the afterlife and what it is, and telling tales about that. Although its origin lies in pagan rituals to ward off evil spirits that arose once a year, along with the traditional of All Hallows Eve, it has come to be a largely secular children's holiday of dress-up and scary stories. This is not uncommon, as Thanksgiving, Guy Fawkes Day, and New Year's festivals have changed meaning and celebration styles over the years. Superstition. Superstition is the belief of the causality of seemingly unrelated events and acts unknown to anthropologists as sympathetic magic, and that it is the belief that the actions of a person can influence events beyond the boundaries of time and space. It is a tradition rooted in the belief of larger metaphysically controlling forces in the universe, whether a particular version of God or just the idea of luck. Famous examples of superstition include bad luck resulting from breaking a mirror, opening an umbrella inside, or spilling salt, a fear of the number 13, and even the theater tradition of referring to Shakespeare's play Macbeth as the Scottish play to avoid bringing on the curse associated with the play. Fairy tale. Fairy tales are universally seen as fictitious, often beginning with the phrase "once upon a time" or "in a land far, far away," and recounting stories of heroines and danger, princesses in disguise, magic, adventure, and anthropomorphic animals and creatures. Conceived in Germany around the 17th century, the fairy tale is a type of folklore that has changed dramatically over time. William and Jacob Grimm, known as the Grimm brothers, started to collect orally transmitted German tales in early 17th century, publishing the first series of the Kinder as translated children's and house tales in 1812. These early fairy tales were vastly different from the children's tales of today. Most were dark stories revolving around such moral lessons as obeying your parents and rejecting evil. The familiar fairy tale Hansel and Gretel may primarily be one of the mundane instructions regarding forest safety, or secondarily a cautionary tale about the dangers of large families. Which, how this person is depicting it, I don't know. I kind of have, I do have a disagreement about that. I mean, I get their point, and, but there's a little bit more to it. And I guess they're going through going to the aspects of stating the general, and then you going from there, I guess, concluding, or if you want to read further into it. But to add on to this, I think it also the Hansel and Gretel is a really good example of the aspects of, from what I understand, is it changes the ideas of who is in the predominant role of the female committing this act of horrible neglect. So some tales say that it's the mother that did this, and some, for the predominant understanding of the tale and the telling of the tale, it's a stepmother doing this. And so this begs the question of this idea too of the aspect of nature and nurture, begging to the extremity, and also going back to the extremity of adversity. Where does your moral compass lie? And what kind of decisions do you make when you're in a situation that begs you to make the choice of what's morally right? And it also steams into the ideas of toxic femininity. Now, that's a buzzword that it has been floating around predominantly more in this day and time, but now delving deep into this buzzword of this is the reason why I'm saying this. Now, what is toxic? Toxic is something that is hazardous to your health, that if you come near it, it could kill you. So, with this is saying, having the mental capacity of saying, and that children, particularly even more so, whether that is your biological offspring or not, choosing the path of disregarding them and abandoning them for your own gain, because it's not economically feasible to keep them around, which is ridiculous. And I mean, how can you think that that's an option to just abandon because of your economic status? That is what's going on here. And so it also goes back to the aspect of the foundation of how important it is, and how it should be a centered focus on society of cherishing manhood and the structure of the importance of having a strong, predominant male figure in the household and the rearing of children. So in this case now I'll go into more urban legends as I get into the month of July, but I just feel like that this is a good focal point to go on to think about, as far as the essence of the good aspects, and one of the epitomal roles of delving deep into the tangible and concrete elements of why folklore continues to exist and should continue to exist. So, the importance of having a strong male figure, it leads to the essence of leadership. And if you have a man in your life and he is very he's very straightforward in his way of thinking, and he's diplomatic, but at the same time he sticks to his moral beliefs and it can't be swayed by it. That changes the dynamic in the ways of which a society functions, and even more so, particularly the way a family is structured, because you have that strong foundation to children can look after and see as a moral development in their own characters, and that becomes well-rounded and better people. And also for the aspect of the females, who choose to center themselves around and marry or date, and then ideally, from my point of view, to date then marry, a man who is so centered in his moral compass, it changes the personality and dynamic of the female aspect of femininity to where it's more spiritual and giving and nurturing into those things are flourished and developed into a magical way that is very present in the way the flow and the structure is in the family, to the essence that the children understand, and the man understands that there is an ever-present support system there from their wife and so forth. And it's just a two-way street for both of that support system to go on, because if the man knows that they are supported by their wife, vice versa, the relationship is flourishing because they can both trust and lean on each other when times are vastly, vastly hard. And then also on the greater side of this, to know and really celebrate and relish in the celebration of life when joyous occasions are present. Because they really appreciate that aspect of, and understand the aspect of appreciating what you have, and then how that nourishes to something remarkable when you reap the benefit of that. Okay. And I'm going to go on here. So, the tall tale. A tall tale is a form of traditionally American folklore, often a light, comical story of some larger-than-life person who achieves supernatural deeds. They are often stories of national pride and cultural iconography. Johnny Appleseed is created with traveling the vast wilderness of early America, spreading apple seeds wherever he went, thus being the source of the numerous apple trees in the northwestern U.S. Paul Bunyan and his ox, Baby Blue, are giant characters credited with the union of such famous landmarks as the Grand Canyon and Pecos Bill was the image of the frontier cowboy life. Most of these stories are complete fiction, but at least one, Johnny Appleseed, is based on an actual person, Johnny Champ, whose life work as a nursery man was a great deal more practical than depicted in the tale. Okay, epic poetry. Like myth and legend, epic poetry deals with heroes of long ago, supernatural powers, deities, and grandiose battles. The main difference between these is that epic poetry tends to be the end result of a series of oral traditions. Epic poetry, as a form of literature, consists of novel-length poems originally sang in ceremony. It involves the author's aspect of a muse or god to speak through the author. The most famous the most famous of epic poets, ancient Greece Homer, was believed to have produced such classics as the Iliad and the Odyssey by condensing long-standing Greek myth, legend, and tradition into a structured narrative. Virgil's tales the tradition into a structured. I'm sorry. Let me start over again. All right. So Virgil's tales brings together the traditions of Greek and Trojan legends as well as Roman beliefs to detail the founding of Rome. And John Spencer's The Fairy Queen bridges the Arthurian legend as a Protestant ideology and British lore and two classic works of fiction. John Milton's Paradise Lost not only uses the dogma of the Bible, but also incorporates Puritan traditions and beliefs. And most modern-day conception of Satan in the Garden of Eden stories come more from Milton's interpretation than the Bible. The majority of evolution in epic poetry comes from translation. Epic poetry is not as easily dismantled and used in an existent culture, but it acts as its own cultural artifact that may inspire new forms of lore and fiction. While the origin work is hardly changed in the ways other forms of lore are, however, change does occur and is due mostly to the variation of numerous translations depending upon the translator's bias and the difference between the phonetics and semantics of language. All right, and to end on this category, the last installment of it is urban legend. An urban legend is perhaps the newest form of folklore to emerge, and one of the most unique. While it can be found in most industrialized countries, and one of its distinguishing factors is most widespread in America. Urban legends are typically a collection of oral stories passed around from person to person, never as a first-hand account of events. Typically, the stories are relating as happening to someone 3 or 4 times removed in their association to the storyteller. Most urban legends are merely variations of similar stories, characteristically with a twist at the end. Some unforeseen event that is either ironic or supernatural. Alright, so for instance, the driver who picks up the hitchhiker who varies before the trip is complete and is revealed to be a ghost is a classical example. As is the story of the recently escaped serial killer or mental patient, sometimes with a hook for a hand, who terrorizes a young couple parked in a car in a wooded, deserted area. All right, so, and then it goes into the impact of certain, of pop culture. So, for instance, the hitchhiker tale, that goes along the lines of the aspect of the Twilight Zone with a particular episode where a woman is picking up a hitchhiker, right? And, for those who haven't seen it, sorry for the spoiler alert. Turns out that hitchhiker is Death himself. And it's a moral reality of that idea of not coming to terms with your own mortality and dealing with that, but in a supernatural way that depicts urban legends behind all of these things. And then also to go on the other side of this, on another, not other side, but another example of this, or the hook hand, and going into the aspect, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and delving into the urban legend of that, and even more so along the lines of particularly the horror film of the urban legends, how there's, from what I remember from my memories, a serial killer going around committing urban murders that all center around urban legends. Alright, so this reaches the end of the Harboring Light. Questions, comments, concerns is greatly appreciated. I'd love to hear that feedback. So either shoot me an email or reach out to me. Questions, comments, concerns through Substack, or follow me on Substack. Be greatly appreciated. Tune in, turn up, and definitely take care out there. Hope to hear from you, and see you soon.